everyone, how's it? My name is Matt. I'm a photographer living in Hawaii, and in this video, we're going to take a look at some of these images that I took the other day. It's one of the first swells of the 2024-2025 season here on the North Shore of Oahu, and I want to talk a little bit about the lens, which is the 400mm F2.8, as well as just talk about some of these photos that I took. These are just the unedited photos, so maybe we will edit a couple of them, chat a little bit about the lens and some of my tips and recommendations when using it, as well as taking a little bit deeper of a dive into these photos. So without further ado, let's dive into the video. So the 400mm f2.8 lens is a really cherished lens in my collection. I've decided to purchase the lens this year. I do own a variety of Sony lenses, including the 70-200 G Master Mark II, the 200-600mm. I own the 300mm f2.8, the 400mm f2.8, and perhaps I'll consider getting the 600mm f4 perhaps this year ahead of the season when it really starts to pick up here. But I think it's important to take a little deeper dive into some of these raw files and just show you a little bit more. One thing before we dive super deep into some of these photos here, you'll notice that some of them look pretty noisy. I can assure you though that it's not really noise, it's just more so extremely light winds the day that I took these photos, and there's a lot of mist. These photos were all taken at Rocky Point. So if you're familiar with Rocky Point on the North Shore of Oahu, it's just some of the most amazing waves when it's really good. But unfortunately, with the super light winds that we had, the mist is kind of lingering a bit. So you can see in this image here, it is shot at ISO 100 at f2.8 at 1600th of a second. For this particular day, I was shooting in aperture priority mode using my Sony A9 Mark I camera. If you are not familiar with my work, or maybe you're newer to my channel, a lot of my videos I do tend to ramble on quite a bit, and I will talk about a variety of topics that can all kind of relate to the photos. What you may learn in this video may or may not even apply to what you shoot, but the cool thing about it is you can apply any information that you wish to your own photography. So whether you're a wildlife photographer, a sports action photographer, or you shoot anything, hopefully you can take away something from this video. I shoot a lot of telephoto lenses. I really enjoy the compression. I really enjoy the reach. I don't shoot necessarily a whole ton of things super wide unless it's real estate or maybe some portraiture stuff. So take it for what it is, but we'll try to do some other videos with other lenses as well too. But for now, this video is mostly about the 400mm f2.8 lens by Sony. So let's take a little deeper dive into some of these photos here. Let's start with this one here. This is straight out of the camera. I have not done anything yet to this photo. Rocky Point is roughly 50 yards away from the shoreline, so right now, probably a little bit less than that actually. During the early season right now, this sand is all still there, and if you're familiar with it, you know that during the wintertime, the sand erodes away during the winter when the swells start to come and it dumps the sand further down the beach. But cool thing about early season like this is you are able to get a little bit closer and have a little bit more freedom to move around because the sand is really nicely hugging the outer reef the reef where these waves are starting to break. This particular day, we were looking probably 4 to 6 foot with the occasional North Shore 8 foot. Let's see if I have any photos in here with size. Hey, you can tell about this. I mean, that's a normal size person there, so you can tell the waves are pretty decent. Some of these photos you can't quite see the size of the waves, but I think some of them that you can kind of get the vibe that they are a little bit bigger waves and to anticipate a little bit more action. But anyways, I digress. Jumping back into this photo here, I think I want to go ahead and edit this photo slightly. I don't really think there's a whole lot I want to do with it. I really enjoy it. Obviously, the horizon needs to be fixed, and that can easily be done. I edit photos in Photoshop, but then I also toggle between the Camera Raw plugin. If you're not familiar with the Camera Raw plugin, essentially it's the same exact program as Lightroom. I believe, from my understanding, the guy who wrote Lightroom also wrote the program for Camera Raw. I can't confirm that, but I believe that's true. So if you like Photoshop, but you kind of like some of the features in Lightroom, like in my case, I find that I kind of like both. That's great. This isn't really necessarily a bunch of tips and tricks in how to edit things in Photoshop or Camera Raw, but I just want to show you some of the things that I do in it to edit some photos. I always make a duplicate layer over here. I never edit the first, like the background layer. And then also too, I make everything, or not everything, but anytime I'm using Camera Raw plugin, I will make sure it's a smart object, and then I can go into my filter Camera Raw. So when Camera Raw opens, it basically looks just the same as Lightroom for the most part. The reason why I really like this is because I can toggle back and forth between Photoshop. I like some of the editing features better in Photoshop. I'm fully aware that you can toggle pretty easy between moving your photo from Photoshop to Lightroom. This is just how I've done it. There's a million and one ways that you can do it. If you learn a different strategy from someone else, so be it, that's okay. This is simply just what I do. Anyway, so when I initially go in to edit a photo, I'm kind of always looking to experiment and see where the photo is going to allow me to take it. I've heard from a lot of people that they have a specific vision in mind when they're editing the photo. For me, I always am just seeing where the photo will allow me to take it. I firmly believe that there are just some photos that are not designed to do certain things. So for example, this image here, I know for a fact that it's going to be noisy. I know that it's not the most crisp photo, but the first thing that I will most likely do when I go to edit this photo is turn it into black and white. The colors are not good. I mean, just the ungodly amount of mist that was present here, and it's kind of boring as far as the colors go, like in the sky, but we'll change that anyways. So photos like this, you can easily not have to do a whole lot to it, because I don't think there's a whole lot I do need to do to it, but let's jump back into the Camera Raw filter. When I'm initially editing photos, I do not worry about the horizons or editing, like taking certain things out, any distraction. So for example, if there was another surfer like here going over the wave, for example, I might take that out because I think it might take away from this guy surfing. So anytime I'm editing, I always look to see what's hiding in the shadows. So whether that's with exposure or whether that's with the shadows, I just like to see what's out there and what's available for me to see. Because sometimes when you're editing a photo, let's say for example, I raise the exposure and I kind of discover something, again, maybe it was another surfer over here, that kind of exposes him a little bit more properly. Or sometimes you realize, oh, no, we want to keep it kind of hidden. But to be quite honest, again, I'm not really going to do a whole lot to this photo. I'm pretty happy with it. I do suggest, at least in my editing style, what I normally do with the sliders, as you can see over here, I like to crank them quite a ways in either direction, just so I can see what's hidden again. I've said that a few times already, but I do like to see what's hidden and how it can possibly enhance my photo. I'm not really a big fan of saturation, so if you're not familiar with the difference between saturation and vibrance, then you can go look that up, but I'm more of a vibrance person. I don't like to target the whole photo, every individual pixel necessarily, so anyways, so I digress. Getting back to what I was doing, I do like to make a little bit of contrast in my photos. Not a ton. I don't think that's, we're just, the photo is what it is. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do. I use the backspace or the backslash key a lot. So this is the before and this is the after, before and after. A lot of times as well too, what I do like to do is after I'm done editing a photo, I do like to kind of let it rest for a little bit, and then I like to go back to it, because I find that if you just go one time real quick, edit a photo, oftentimes you go back and you say, whoa, that's not exactly what I really wanted to do. And we will adjust this photo right here, content aware fill. That is a great little feature right here. So when I adjust this photo and rotate it, instead of it just cropping it out, it's going to fill in these little white spaces for me the best as it can with the generate content aware fill. So give it a second and boom, it's done. So kind of a cool little edit. I don't think any of these photos are exactly banger photos by any means, but they're all right. And again, they were just shot on the 400mm lens. I did not use any teleconverters. I did not use crop sensor. I did not use any like additional features. It's just the 400mm F2.8 attached to the Sony A9 Mark I camera body. And my subjects were close, so I don't have to worry about cropping. Sometimes I do get those types of questions as people don't understand how I'm able to get that close. And I could probably make another video in regards to what I kind of consider how the cost of getting to 600mm, for example. So a lot of my following is in the action sports world. And typically in shots like this, you are going to need a longer length telephoto lens. So that's what I shoot, and that's where I'm at, and that's probably hopefully why you're watching this video. Let's go talk about, let's see here, let's find, so I do a lot of astrophotography as well too, and I wouldn't say I'm super into necessarily moon photos, but I do like photos of the moon. So here's a shot of the moon that I took. Nothing to really brag about or go home to, but obviously I would crop this in accordingly. This is what the moon looks like at 400mm. So if you're shooting the moon with, you're wondering how close you can get to the moon with 400mm, this is it right here. Not too bad. The Sony A9 Mark I is I believe a 24 megapixel camera. So if you are in need of more reach and are looking to use this lens, but you still need the additional reach, there's a few different ways that you can achieve that with the lens. One, you could use crop sensor mode on your camera. So there's a setting in APS-C mode on your most newer Sony camera bodies, and newer meaning the A7 III, I believe. I think that was the first Sony camera body that allows crop sensor mode to toggle between crop sensor and full frame mode. The other ways, you could do a teleconverter. So Sony makes teleconverters in 1.4x or 2x teleconverters. I have used those to take photos of the moon, and I have gotten some absolute spectacular photos using my 200 to 600mm lens with the teleconverter, with the crop sensor mode on. Again, this was shot with just a 400mm, no crop sensor, just it is what it is. So next, let's take a look at this photo. Again, this is the unedited photo with the 400mm f2.8 lens. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of a deeper dive into this photo here without the edit. So I would have to say the clarity, pretty darn good on that. I will say the lighting in this day was just not really the best. I mean, there wasn't really, the skies looked like they were pretty clear, but it was like one of those days where it was like a little bit like kind of hazy. It was still a little bit bright, and then the sun came out later in the day, as you can see like in these photos here. So let's take a little look here to see what we can do with this photo here. As far as the quality goes, there is nothing, in my opinion, that's going to beat a G Master lens. I mean, once you start getting into these prime lenses, you're just going to find the quality of your work is just going to explode. I'm a very big believer in buying better glass than buying a better camera body. Currently, right now, it's the year 2024. It's September 2024, and right now, Sony's best flagship camera is the A1 Mark I, and I'm sure It would not surprise me at all if they eventually or in the near future come out with the Mark II A1. For sports photographers, I think that is an outstanding camera. There's also the option for the Sony A9 Mark III. So it's the same camera body that I'm using here, except it's the third version. I believe it's priced pretty comparable to the A1 camera. The big difference is that you're going to get an extremely different amount of bursts, or have the option to. This is 20 frames a second here, which I believe is pretty good for sports photography. I think 30 frames a second is probably the most ideal for professional photographers or people who are hardcore wildlife enthusiasts. I mean, if you are traveling for photography, regardless whether it's paid or not, if you have the ability to travel for wildlife or for sports, you're probably doing something right, meaning you do have the financials to travel to go do what you really enjoy to do, rather than just kind of feeling stuck in your backyard, for example, shooting wildlife. So I'm not saying that's applicable to everybody, but the reality is that photography is extremely expensive. If you think that I just magically can afford these lenses and these camera bodies, I mean, I work for it. So you gotta just keep chugging away, if you want this type of gear, the quality. As I've said before, I'm a firm believer that the lenses, the glass, is going to give you much better results than the camera body. I kind of have a saying, I guess, a really bad surfer cannot surf good waves, but a really good surfer can surf bad waves, or at least know how to. So I kind of feel like that's the same thing that applies to the camera lenses and the camera body. I think that it's the lens that truly is the workhorse. There's a lot of different variations and situations that we can all be in, so some of you may not believe that's true, but that's what I believe in. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a little deeper dive into this photo here. As I've mentioned before, I do edit in Photoshop and in Camera Raw. I don't really prefer to use Lightroom. So let's go ahead and make this into a smart object, and then we are going to jump into the Camera Raw. The first thing that I like to do, I think in this situation, is I like to see what's hiding in the shadows. I already have a feeling that we're going to expose the surfer much better, and in my opinion, that looks much better already. So here's what I shot. Here's what I edited, and I literally didn't do anything other than just raise the shadows. I generally don't like to push my settings higher than like 50, but sometimes it just kind of calls for that. I can raise the exposure a little bit just to get it better there. Great. Add a little bit of vibrance. This is one of those images that the lighting is just not really necessarily going to allow me to take the photo to where I wish it would be. Like if it was great lighting, I would love that, but the reality is the lighting was not spectacular. But there's some of the detail in the waves there. I always like to look for stuff like that in the photos to make sure it's nice and crisp and sharp. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it could be better, could be worse. So I'm pretty happy overall with that, but nice little turn right there. So let's add a little bit of dehaze there. One of my tricks, I guess you could call it, is I like to add a little bit of a punch to my subject. I want my eyes to go quickly to that subject, and I generally do that by doing a mask of some type. So whether it's a radial gradient, so if you're editing, if you go into the layers right here, create a new layer mask, and there's different ways that you can, different features that you can accomplish different results with. So for example, maybe in this one, I want the bottom of the image just to be a little bit darker. I want to see what it looks like. I'm a big believer in trying some things out and just seeing where it takes you. I want your eyes to go to the subject immediately. So before, after, before, after. So yes, the subject is brighter. Your eyes are always going to go to the brightest thing in the subject or in the image. In this particular case, I want to hone it in a little bit more. I don't I don't really like how when I'm going before and after, like I feel like my eyes are going to the subject right here, but I wanted to kind of target it a little bit more, so I am going to add a little bit of vignette, just a tiny bit, nothing crazy, but it's very subtle, but that's the effect that I want. I want the before and after to really highlight the subject, whether it's in the center of the frame, whether it's, if you do the rule of thirds or, whatever, great. I don't personally follow any of that kind of stuff, but when I'm editing, I like to edit the subject the way it pops the most. So to kind of go back over here with this mask that I added here, so this is the subject right here, I might even consider doing it a tiny bit more. I might bring down the blacks just a tiny bit, just to make it a little more punchy. And then here's what I shot. Here's how I edited it. Here's what I shot, here's what I edited. And then again, you do that with the backslash button on your keyboard. Same thing within Lightroom. So nice little edit. Again, I do not think this is like a crazy award-winning image by any means, but I do think it's a nice image. I like the action. Zooming in even further here, we could do a tiny bit of noise reduction. I know, as I've stated at the very beginning of the video, that the conditions were just a little tricky to shoot in. I'm shooting through between me and this guy here, probably a little less than 50 yards or so. And that's a lot of airspace in between me and him. And there's a lot of mist that day. So the waves are pretty big. This is one of the first swells of the season. And you just feel it in the air where you can see that you're probably gonna have a little bit of challenge, like really getting crisp, clear photos. I think by my standards, yes, I understand that this is a pretty unfocused photo. I think it's just the conditions are preventing it from being what it is. I'm fully aware that we could do some noise reduction here. I'm not really a huge fan of it. I think it kind of like smooths it out a little bit too much. So fine, I'll do just like a touch right here. There's software programs that you can run your photos through if that's what you wish to do, but I don't really waste my time with that. So great. Okay, so before and after, just like that. That's great. So in Photoshop, you can do the same thing with before and after. You can see that I have my little layers right here. Smart Object, I can turn the option on. So this is the edit. This is where I started. There's the edit. This is where I started. I think it's a cool photo. Remember when we were editing the other photo, I said to go back to it and check it out. Here it is. I think it's a nice photo. I'm just going to leave it as is. Even when I go back to, where is it here? This photo here. I think this photo is about done. I think it's a little bit on the purple side. I can just tell that the tint is a bit kind of wonky. So let's take a look here. It's just going to be so slight. I mean, three little notches there. I mean, it's very, very, very not noticeable. And I think, but see the difference though between, it's probably hard to see on the screen recording, but this is hardly any stops or whatever we call these little guys right over here, the little, the notches. It's so minor, but it makes such a big difference between the couple of these settings here. So here's 10, negative 10, here's 10, positive, and gosh, you just go like so slightly and it really changes the photo. So I'm pretty happy with that. We're just going to leave it alone there. Let's now talk a little bit more about the lens, some of the reasons why you might want this lens. I'm just going to go to, I think, BH Photo on their website, 400mm F2.8 lens. Let's pull this up real quick here and go over some of the features of this lens. If you are not familiar with the cost of this lens, there it is. It's extremely expensive lens. The quality that you're going to get, I guess it just depends on where you're at with your photography. I know that when I bought this lens, I could easily recoup my money back for it, and that is the reason why I bought this lens. This lens is the premium Rolls-Royce version of any lens out there. I know Canon makes a similar lens. I know that Nikon makes similar lenses. I don't care what you shoot with. This is what I shoot with. This is what I enjoy. There are people out there that swear by one and can't stand this lens or Sony or whatever. I don't care what you shoot with. It doesn't matter to me because it doesn't affect me. This is how I get my results. I love this lens. I think it is an absolute beast of a lens. When you are holding this lens, it feels good. It's like a fine luxury car. Like as soon as you sit down in it and use it and drive it, it feels amazing. It's the same thing with this lens. When I'm shooting with this lens, I just feel that it's an outstanding quality lens. It is extremely bulky. I will say that. I mean, this lens is gigantic compared to some of the other lenses that I'm using. It's bigger and heavier than the 200 to 600 millimeter lens. So I know a lot of people use that lens for surf photography and for wildlife and sports. It's an amazing lens. Highly recommend it. I still shoot with that lens as well today, but this lens, I will tell you, is very difficult to travel with. So I have been traveling quite a bit lately to other countries, and it can make it really challenging because this case here that it comes with is the size of a carry-on. So the case alone is a carry-on. It's a pretty bulky lens. It's very big and it's very hard to travel with. I will say it's worth it though. I don't give a crap. I still want to use it when I'm traveling. So for those asking in regards to the drop-in filter, the photos that we were looking at earlier, let me pull those back up here. These did not have the drop-in CPL filter on there. I actually forgot it, and it was on my 300 millimeter lens. So the drop-in filter, 100% is worth spending the $400 on. So this filter right here, I can tell by the little notches, is not included with the purchase of the lens. So if you, let's see if we can zoom in here. When you purchase the lens, it comes with this just like little drop-in right here. It is not a filter though. So this filter right here, I can tell by the little knobs right here, that is the drop-in filter. So you can move those up and down, and then it will change the tint in here. So when you purchase the lens, again, it just comes in with a drop-in slot, but it is not a CPL filter. So keep that in mind when you're spending the money on this, that you will need to purchase it again, or not again, but you will need to purchase the drop-in filter if you're interested. So in regards to the size here of the lens, here are the measurements of this lens. Again, it is very bulky. The 14.25 inch here from the connection to the lens front does not even include the lens hood. I mean, the lens hood adds an additional quite a few inches there, and it reverses and collapses down. So here's what it looks like in full. And then this unscrews, and then it turns on and fits backwards right here onto the lens. So great lens. I just really can't say enough about it. You just have to commit to it. If this is what you're interested in, it's going to cost you. Sorry, that's just the brutal honesty of this lens, is that it's going to cost you some money if you want to put it behind. But if you want to achieve that G Master lens quality with your images, you're going to have to shell out the cash for it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Photography is expensive. I always hear people complaining about how expensive it is, and I'm on a budget. If you're on a budget, you should not be buying this lens. It just doesn't make sense to. And I can probably make another video in regards to other lenses that I could recommend. 400 millimeters for me, getting into the reason why I purchased this lens, is because of I wanted that specific focal length for what I'm shooting. I do a lot of surf photography, especially in the wintertime. 400 millimeters to me is amazing focal length to shoot from the beach, at Pipeline, at Backdoor, at Rocky Point. There's a couple breaks here that are a little bit further if you're familiar with those, like Velziland. You will need a little bit more reach. I do have the teleconverters, so if I do need the reach, then I can use those. As far as the optical quality goes, I don't even think we need to talk about it. I mean, it's spectacular. It's great. I don't even know what to say. Image quality is spectacular. Just the quality, the crispness, the clearness, everything about shooting with the G Master lens is everything and more that I want. I'm able to achieve the results that I want, that my clients are extremely happy with. I've sold some insane images off to beer companies. The resort is always buying images from me that I take there. Again, you just need to shell out the cash if you want the quality. I'm so sorry. I hate to be like that brutally honest, but this is why I shoot with this little orange gold logo lens right here. I shoot all of my lenses are G Master lenses because I get the similar results. All of them except my 200 to 600 is a G Master, and you get what you pay for. So maybe what we'll do real quick, why don't we talk about a tricky situation, just a little tip that you can do when you are shooting and lighting conditions, just the overall conditions are not really that great. I've said this now about 10 times during the video that I find that this to be a very in-sharp focused image. I'm just shooting through the mist. I mean, that's what this is. You can just clearly tell that there's just so much water in the air. I remember I was just there a couple days ago when I was shooting this, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be one of those edits, kind of one of those editing, tricky edits, I guess, when you're doing this. But one of the first things that I will do with photos when I am in tricky situations is I will just have to turn them into black and white. I don't think the color of the waves is anything super spectacular. I don't think that the quality of the image, I guess what I mean is I know that I'm not going to be able to get the results that I'm looking for. So this is an example where I kind of already knew ahead of time that I'm going to need to turn this into black and white. So we'll just go ahead and do that from the get-go, and maybe we'll just take a little edit there. So I normally just go into black and white here. You can do this one of many different ways, but I think I like it to be nice and contrasty. So another way that you can do this, we will cancel the changes here. We can go into this layer here, and then on the bottom here, you can just go into gradient. I quite like this option here. I guess I don't want to call this as a more advanced option. I wouldn't say that necessarily, but you can click on here and then make images brighter. You can make them darker. You can raise the shadows. You can do so many things with this. Whatever you want to do is what you can do. This particular photo is going to take a little bit more time to edit just because I'm going to do it in Photoshop by adding the layers. So I know this is, a lot of people are so hardcore about being clean with their edits and adding these layers and all of this and all of that. And sometimes the reality is, like, I make a copy of this image. So for example, let's say someone wanted to purchase this image, I would copy the original and make another copy of it and then edit it and then use the layers just in case they want different edits or they want something else. So there's 1,000,001 ways to edit photos. You are welcome to edit this however you wish. That's fine. Whatever you got to do. So let's just go in real quick here. We are going to change some of the levels here, and let's just take a look here what we can do. So I am going to, I like the contrast here. I like to play around, and it's a bit of a process, right? So I like everything to be a little bit contrasty. We'll get into a little deeper here, I guess, in editing than I was planning on doing, but it's fine because I like this photo quite a bit. So what we'll do is we will invert this layer right here in Photoshop, And I'm just gonna kind of like play around a little bit here to see with this, because I like the more contrasty vibe here that we're getting. And then honestly, I will probably go back and change this, but that's the cool part of doing this is, you know what I'm gonna do? Change a plan. See, this is why I like editing, is because I do firmly believe that editing will allow you to take your image to different places, and that's okay. I think that's what editing should be about. I think you should have fun with it. I think you should want to enjoy doing it. I think that you should want to edit photos. I do believe that good photographers do like editing. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea, but anyways, that's what I believe in. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to invert that layer as well, and then we are going to expose this, clean this up a little bit here. Great. Just a little bit. I don't do a ton of it. There we go. Great. Cool. Okay. Okay, so let's go back in. We're going to make this layer a smart object. We are going to go into the camera raw filter again, and we are going to start to play around with some of the stuff here. So the gradient filters, we're going to put this cool gradient here on the bottom. We kind of did this in a previous image, but I just want to focus my subject a little bit more, kind of hone you into the viewing of it. So here is a radial filter, and what I want to do is target this specific area here. So I want the whites to be just like a little bit more punchy, there to be a little bit more contrast, just a tiny bit, and let's see if we can kind of pop this exposure here. So see how that effect, it's right there. That is the effect that I want. When you toggle back and forth, your eye immediately is drawn right to the surfer. Your eye is drawn right to this layer in this area right here. That is what I want. So again, going back and forth, when I toggle back and forth, oops, sorry. Let me go in here, toggle back and forth. That is what I like. I like to see a little bit more punch right in the middle. I believe I've already said this, but I don't think any of these photos are necessarily any award-winning photos, but there's some pretty cool ones in there. I do like to play around with the settings. I've mentioned that before, and I think that is important. I like that. I like that nice punch right there. Really nice. Looks good. And here we go with the before and the after. So this is just kind of where I'm at with this, is this photo is not going to allow me to take it anywhere, in my opinion, with color. So by putting it in black and white, I think that we could probably do, honestly, a little bit more work on here. A little tip that I have is when you are doing a mask, so let's go ahead and select this, and we're going to look at this together. So again, I have not actually edited these photos yet. This is we're kind of editing them through, so if you kind of feel like I'm spacing out a little bit, I'm just trying to think of exactly what I want to do. So when you create a mask, what you can do is either add more to the mask or subtract more from the mask. So I am going to subtract my subject, and let's see if it can pick it up. So in this case, it did not pick up my subject, which was this guy here. So what I want to do is I want the mask here, but I want the subject to be removed. So Photoshop and Lightroom, it's never going to be perfect. I can promise you that it doesn't always recognize everything. There's a lot going on in this photo, as far as like the motion of the water here. We got the wave. So I can't explain the algorithm and how it knows how to do it. But anyways, so we've already tried to remove the subject. So let's go into remove brush. And what I'm going to do is make this a little bit smaller here, and I'm just going to go over here, and I want the flow to increase a bit just so I can kind of expedite this. We're just going to go through here real quick and do this just for demonstration purposes. Get this guy's leg. Great. honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's okay. So let's zoom back out here. And I just want to show you, just kind of make it pop just a little bit more. Let's do fit, and let's do before and after, before and after. So that mask really enhanced this image significantly, in my opinion. So was the detailed job on there of removing that mask epic? No, it was not by any means, but I'm quite satisfied with it. Again, I don't think this is an award-winning image by any means, but I think it's really sick. Another thing that I like to do too is when I'm editing is I like to paint a little bit. I like that quite a bit. I don't like to go overboard, but what I want is a little bit more white in this area here. Not a ton, but there's a lot of white water, so I want to see what this will look like when I increase the whites a bit. Just make it a little bit more, just a little bit, not a lot. I think that's cool. So this is where we started with the black and white. This is where I ended with the black and white. I could probably do a tiny bit more work here, like on the spray right here. So I like this white slash right here. Let's see what we can do up here with maybe some of this stuff. I would recommend making sure your flow is a little bit low, just so it's not too crazy, but let's go in here. Let's add a little bit of texture. Just a little bit. And again, remember what I was saying is I like to go extreme. So I like to look at one and go with the other. I tend to recommend avoiding going over 50% like we've talked about. Let's add a little bit of clarity. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Okay, very good. Just makes it a little bit more punchy. That's all. I just like these little white dots to be known that he's cut that wave pretty good. Cool. Great. So anyways, I think I've rambled on long enough in this video. I think that some of these photos are pretty good, not too shabby at all. If you have any questions about the 400mm lens, if you have more questions about editing, please feel free to leave some notes in the comments and I will get to them. Other than that, thank you so much for watching and we will see you in the next video. Aloha.